Good morning or evening, wherever you are. I'm Stephen Henry Madoff, the chair of the MA Curatorial Practice program at the School of Visual Arts in New York. And each week, I invite a curator, an institutional director, or in this case, deputy director, to speak about their practice. And today I'm really thrilled to have Frankie Su, who's speaking to us from Taipei. I'm going to read a short bio of Frankie, and she'll speak for about 50 minutes, 50 minutes, and then um, you can put a question or comment for Frankie at the bottom of your screen. There's a Q&A. Just click on that, type your question. I'll read them aloud, and that's how it goes. So. Frankie Su is a curator and arts manager whose practice bridges contemporary art, institutional strategy, and cultural programming. She's currently deputy director of the new Taipei City Art Museum, where she contributes to shaping the museum's exhibitions and international collaborations. Frankie began her curatorial career at the Museum of Contemporary Art Taipei and played an early role in the founding of the Ullens Center for Contemporary Art in Beijing. With an MA in art history from the University of Essex, she approaches curating as an interface between research, public engagement, and artistic experimentation. Frankie's work continues to support regional and global dialogues within Asian contemporary art. And with that, Frankie, welcome.
Thank you. Hi, everyone, and thank you all for coming to this curatorial roundtable session. And also thank you, Stephen, for inviting me. And I don't think I've ever speak on online like this before. I mean, most of my lectures or speech are like for real person. So hopefully I can do it well, and hopefully you all get my point. But anyway, let me start sharing my PowerPoint. Okay. Although Stephen already speak a little bit about my past experience in the art world, but I guess also I wanted to, one by one talk a little bit of what I've done in all those institutions. So then you will get to know why I get interested in the digital art, video art, and then furthermore for the net art platform. And so let me start. Okay, I start like most of my colleagues and my friends in the art world. I start as a coordinator, and then I before I speak about my experience in the art world, I wanted to mention about that actually the multiple roles that I've been through in the past 20 something years experience. It's a very wonderful journey for me because no matter I serve as a coordinator or project manager or curator or director, those roles make me understand how the art works better, and not only for the professional field, but also for the audience, which also in the show bio mentioned that I'm also very interested in the public engagement as well. And so that's something that I learned from so many years of experience in art. So firstly, my starting point in art is the Museum of Contemporary Art Taipei. This museum is an art center without any collection, and it's located in a heritage building of an old elementary school from the Japanese time. So here I not only learn how to make art exhibitions, working together with guest curators or artists, but I also we also try very hard to do public programs and educational programs with the schools, which is right behind. It's a senior high school right behind MOCA Taipei. So this experience actually shaped my concept or my thoughts about how a public art museum mission can be. Not only making like nice exhibitions, not only try to make high quality artworks presentation in the museum, but also thinking about the relationship with the audience, local audience or international audience. And then also here in MOCA Taipei, I also curate a few shows of solo artists, solo Taiwanese artists, and then also a contemporary design conceptual show as well. Then after a couple of years in MOCA Taipei, I moved to the Ullens Center of Contemporary Art in Beijing. I arrived in UCCA before it was launched for the grand opening, and that's year 2006. And this experience for me is very unique because I was in the beginning of this a preparation team. Whereas, even without the space open to the public, we spent a lot of time talking about what are we going to do in the future, which at that time it was very conceptual. So after a couple of years, realize that and then have the grand opening. For me, it's a very big impact of seeing what you shape in your head and then literally happen, in the real world. And of course, for UCCA, for this experience in UCCA, because it's a very international team. And at that time, Beijing it's totally different because that's before 2008, the Olympic game. And the Olympic game actually changed Beijing a lot. And then a lot of artists left, but in the 798 area, whereas UCCA is now, also changed a lot. It's a lot more commercial now. But back to them, it's artists. It's like local artist studios, and you only have a few art centers located there, and it's a very different sort of atmosphere. But for me, this part of the experience sort of lead me to a very comprehensive understanding about working with especially international artists like Lawrence Winner, like Mona Hatun, and as at that time I was the assistant curator, and although I didn't really get a chance to curate a big show, but it helped me a lot on thinking of making an art exhibition, but in a more global perspective. And then also, because UCCA is one of the first international institution who introduced international artists to China. So also it's very interesting for me to thinking about how we can translate all those different language to the local Chinese audience, and also because it's a booming time of 798, while still not as many audience as they have now. So it's for promotion, for marketing, it's also a big challenge. Then after a couple of years in Beijing, I came back to Taiwan and started to work with this artist collective, Luxurylogico. It's very interesting to start this role that they are actually four students who just graduated from the new media art department, and each of them have a different talent or to make artwork. One of them is interested in making music. One of them is two of them are more interested in making mechanical installations, and then the other one who is more interested in writing software script and interactive art. And when they call me, I literally just arrived in Taipei for a couple of days, and then they call me and say that they have these crazy ideas of trying of talking about want to work together. Four of them work together as a collective, but they are actually very worried about they might get into a big fight, and then they have no idea how four individual artists can work as a team. So they want to invite me to join them as the fifth person who are not in a role of an artist, but more in a role of their project manager, and also you can also say maybe their curator, that somebody can shape the concepts with them, and then while they are trying to make new works, I'm also part of the producer. I'm also part of the producing and sort of role for them. So then that's 2010. But nowadays, as you can see from the background of this image, that it's light bulbs, it's a recycled light bulbs, and then they use computer behind to control the light bulbs, and then they've made a lot of different sort of installations like this, and on top of that, they started to make bigger and bigger installations for like commercial sites, or for like the opening, the inauguration ceremony for a big sports grand opening or something like that. But anyway, they now become very successful. But this is also for me the sort of the starting point of thinking about. So from my other experience from the past of knowing what contemporary art is, this is more. I spent this time more intensively in working with digital art, but still like physical digital art installation, or using computers trying to make a big sculpture or installation, but kinetic or mechanical that moves and then also interact with the audience. But this is for me and how I started to feel like, oh, maybe this is something that I feel interested in, because I'm also a very curious person of knowing what's the new technology and how can we use the new technology, and then how artists or how audience look at the new technology applied into art. And then after this experience working with the collective, I was hired as a director of a private museum called Hong-gah Museum, which is located in not very far away from the Taipei City Center. And then from this image, you can see that it's actually not from outside, from the appearance, it's not a very attractive museum because it's located in a commercial building, in like an office building. It's at the 11th floor. And then when you come up to the main lobby, which is on the right-hand side, the main lobby of the museum, it actually looks quite classical or traditional, if you want to say, because the founder of this museum, he is a collector of embroidery, especially Chinese embroidery. And but at the same time, he is also from a technology background. He has his own firm of develop chips from like 30 years ago or something. So it's like one of the godfather of the chips business in Taiwan. But anyway, because of this background, apart from his own interest in Chinese embroidery, he is also very supportive for the digital art. And so in Hong-gah Museum, I worked for 8 years, and then mainly from this time, I was working for I think 4 editions of an international video art exhibition, which happened every 2 years. So we call it the sort of a video biennial. And then it's one of the signature program of Hong-gah Museum. And also because we have an open call for international artists, so it become quite popular. We receive a lot of and applications every year, every time we have the open call. But I will share more details. I will share more details of the Taiwan International Video Art Exhibition with you so that you know how I get into this. Then, after 8 years as a director in the Hong-gah Museum, I was working for the Taipei Fine Arts Museum, which is a museum that's celebrating more than 30 years in Taipei. And this is one of the main contemporary art and modern art museum in the Taipei City Center. Also because it's very famous for the Taipei Biennial, which I was one of the project manager of the 13th of Taipei Biennial as well. And then also this is where I launched, and later I will talk more about the virtual platform and like a web net platform called Net.Open. And when I was working for Taipei Fine Arts Museum, the museum is planning to have an expansion for another new site, which is right next to the building that you can see from this image. And to to echo to that, because one of the main mission of the museum, of the new part of the museum, is new technology and media art. So before the new museum is open, we were thinking that we should start to prepare our audience, not only from the physical gallery and the physical space. We also have to think about how to cross this barrier of using using net as a way of connecting to people from overseas, and then also to maybe in the future, like working with other institutions through internet or through virtual world, which is a very at that time for the Taipei Fine Arts Museum, it's a very new concept. And then for me the challenge is how to really, shape the idea in a very simple way, and then quickly explain why we need a new digital platform to prepare our audience. And sometimes even just to explain that to my colleagues can be a very big challenge, not even mention about for the general audience. Oh, and like I said, this an experience I will share more later. Then I moved to the job that I have now as a deputy director in the new Taipei City Art Museum. And as you can see, it's quite a big museum in terms of size, located in a very big park. It's 30 minutes by train outside of Taipei main station. So for a lot of people, it's rather regional. And then, so we are facing a lot of audience who are like, for the first time in their life coming to an art museum. And so, although again, it's a very typical sort of contemporary art museum that we're making, group exhibitions, solo exhibitions. We are having Thomas Seratano exhibition now in the museum. And but for the communication part, for for the audience, these is quite a big challenge of because most of them only know Van Gogh, only know Da Vinci, and when it comes to art, they have not that much of experience. So in this museum, as a deputy director, apart from doing the management, I also spent a lot of time thinking about how to communicate with audience. And then I'm not talking about like professional art audience. It's like 80% general audience who need a very detailed or basic explanation or translation for them to get close to art. Okay, so this is, for more, I would say more than maybe almost 25 years of my career from the past, starting from a coordinator and then as a curator, also as a project manager and a director. And my job literally switched from making art exhibition, assisting curator or assisting artists to realize their project, and then also to try to and organize big biennial, with like, over than 50 artists and then, 20 commission new work, on-site new work. And then also as a curator, trying to deliver some of the concepts and idea. And, those roles are very multiple. And then also, I guess, I don't know, maybe for some of you might be interesting, you may thinking that you will work in the future as a curator, but actually from my many years of experience working in art, I find that actually there are many, many different roles that we can perform, and then it can, for all those roles, they are all very important to support an art space, a museum, an institution, or an art center. So that's sort of like the basic part of me in the past. And then, like I said, because of some of the experience, very unique experience, I started to ask myself that how does this new technology work, when it comes to art? And then, of course, in the beginning, what I learned about technology, or what I know about digital art, it's sometimes the starting from maybe like making a video, an exhibition, a video art, or sometimes it's art that you have to use a lot of software, or sometimes it can be like the Luxurylogico that they're using a lot of they're using computer, they're using motors, they are using software to control the objects, so to make some sort of effect. And then so it come to my interest that I started to ask that what else can we do, and what do we have now? So for the first case study I would like to share with you is the Luxurylogico, one of their interdisciplinary project. And from the video, you can see they are actually making the light bulbs as an installation. And then, when they make it moving, you will see the dancers interact with the light bulb. In this installation, in this project, with the poetic moving around of the lights, they invite two dancers to interact with it. And then That's by the time where Luxurylogico were still they were very interesting in artificial control of the objects, but you have real human being interact with the object, and then how does these two things can create a different sort of a stimulation and or inspiration and of on stage. So this is actually a stage piece. So and then this is like the first time that I was involved in this kind of performance with technology, and then after a few pieces like this, we literally explored a lot of possibilities of how do we use all those objects and then control by computer, and then start to let the technology being combined inside. Then, while I was working, like I mentioned, while I was working for the Hong-gah Museum, we have this, every 2 years, we have this Taiwan International Video Art exhibition. And then I think, like, maybe a lot of you might already, be very familiar with that, a video art exhibition, mostly the first thing come to your mind is like it's a black box experience for the audience. So we, a lot of time, having these comments from the audience, especially the elders, that they come to the museum and then they come to see the exhibition, and then the first thing they see is a black room, and then they were very scared. They withdrew and they said, "Oh, there's nothing inside. I didn't see any artwork." And so that's I guess a lot of people's common experience of seeing a video art in a black box. And then, and also because video art is more or less a time-based sort of media and being presented in a physical gallery. So there's a very typical way of thinking how you shape it and then how you prepare the video artwork for the audience to understand. So it's also a very big challenge how to synchronize the technology with the human senses, not only watching it, but also there's sound, there's what you can see, and then in some of the edition we even try to combine like the smell of it. So just to show you a little bit of what we've done, this is one of the edition, which is the 2020 TIVA called Anima. I'll show you a little bit. Okay, so like you can see from the video, actually, a lot of the shots are actually quite black. And, to make this kind of exhibition or to thinking, as a curator or as a project manager, it's actually, you are spending more time thinking about the space and how to avoid the sound fighting with each other, or you're thinking about lighting, you're thinking about the physical experience of audience when they walked in, what can they see, what can they feel, and how do you direct them to have a full understanding of the whole exhibition in turn, and touring the topic that they try to speak about. So for me, yes, it's also sort of a digital art, but it's still very much a one-way communication with the audience, because this is more like you prepare a space, you prepare the artwork, and then you prepare the concept. And then, when people come in, you try to see whether they understand what you're trying to say through the space that you provide. So that's one of the, for me, it's one of the procedure of understanding that, how we use this technology. Then, while I was at the Taipei Fine Arts Museum, this new challenge came up. Like I just mentioned that, because of this new coming up, the new building of the museum coming up, and then one of the mission is to do new media art and then to do new technology inside. So we started to think about that. Where is our audience? How do we prepare our audience for that? And then what's a good and efficient way of doing that? And I remember that's also the COVID time, while I think a lot of you might be involved with, a lot of, because we cannot go out, the city, Taipei was also locked down for a little while, and you don't go out to see any exhibition, but still you have this urge of communicating with your audience. So I know a lot of museums or institutions start to do an online program, and a lot of them, they sort of digitalize what they do in the physical museum and then put it online for people to watch. But when we think about this strategy, I talked with the director, Wang Junjie, about it. And then we were like, why don't we try something different? Since it's already like a Web3 time, and why are we still thinking about one way presenting an artwork on a website for people to see? So I researched a lot of different models, from Asia region, from European region, and then we wanted to see whether we can start something new. Then we prepare this project, TFAM Net.Open. It's more an online platform, and then also we have the name Net.Open. Open is for, we hope it's an open access, and net, of course it's on the internet, but then also we are hoping that we can use this opportunity to connect with other international institutions as well. Here I'll give you a little bit of introduction of how
大
we
家
think
都
about
把
it.
台湾看成这个所谓全球化科技发展的供应链当中一个非常重要的国家。可是我们是不是在这样科技发达的一个环境之下，真的去理解科技发明的技术的背后，它跟未来世界文明发展的这个关系，还有它本质的存在？我们试图去透过这个开放网络计划， 重新去理解科技跟我们未来所处的文明跟人类即将面临的这个新的世界的这个关联性，然后去探讨科技的本质，也去探讨文化跟艺术在这个当中它到底可以做出些什么事情。
And so this is how we are thinking, for this strategy of having TFAM Net.Open. And then, so we invite a British curator, Nadine Salmon, to curate our first show on this platform. It's called The Convolutions. And then I'll show you a little bit before I explain how we do this.
The 3 digital commissions that launched TFAM Net explore increasingly blurry boundaries between real and virtual life, fact and fiction today.
The artists' names are Sang-Yu Chung, Simon Denny, and John Raffman. Their work talks about digital change in society, its possibilities, our hopes and dreams.
As their works appear to suggest, it can be difficult to discern if we inhabit the real world or a hallucination, whether we are living through a technological enlightenment or a new dark age full of myths and speculation. Is this a utopia, a dystopia, or everything all at once?
Like you can see from the video, we have 3 new commissions, and then each of them are very different. But like, for example, John Raffman is making a interactive video games that you can actually have, like many different endings of this story. Sort of the audience, you create your own story. And then Simon Denny is having an online, it's an app that you use your wallet. You use you use your wallet to be one of the dots, and you go through the whole puzzles of the map and to collect your point. So, and then Zheng Xianyu is making a site of generating fake news from all over the world. So this is how we are thinking that, not only it's a browser-based project, so you can call it a browser-based exhibition, but also inside all those content, we try to touch the topics, the issues that is very cutting edge, that is very now what we are facing, in this new technology world, in this, mobile computer, and all those medias that we are using, and, also including the social medias, and how do we look at it now? And so it was reflected in all the artworks. And then, not only for the content we are thinking about this, from that video, you can also see that we're trying to have nothing as defect, and then, using his avatar to talk to our audience to sort of, making a different touch, and then, to make sure that the audience is totally in this sort of scenario. And then it come to me that, using this technology, it's actually also it also let us start to think about that, because you're not looking at a real audience, like, in person. You are actually looking at them in the internet, like what we are doing now. So one of the small projects that we try to do is we try to talking about audience engagement using blockchain technology.
好，那我们这一次展览的名称叫做 GM 开路。那我们当初会有这样的想法其实是针对现有的艺文团队，他们其实希望掌握到来看自己作品的观众过去也去过哪边，进而了解他们的喜好。所以我们希望透过一个相对去中心然后开放的平台，让大家都可以掌握到这些资料，对于现有的艺术生态系中的制作团队、创作者、艺术家，其实会是有帮助的。
we invite Valendao to create this GM, sorry, to create this GM Kairos platform for us. It's a platform that you can it's creating a proof of attendance for the audience, whereas it's a digital platform that if you logged in and then you scan some of the QR codes, you will have your digital pass of art experience. So that for this kind of experience for me is it's very important for my later work, my later position as a deputy director. While now, when I think about my audience, I feel like not only you do a very traditional way of, try to count and how many of them are coming, but using this digital platform or using all those tools will help the museums to understand like the picture of the audience better. So for all those projects that I mentioned, there is a very big challenge is the digital friction because a lot of users, especially the elder users, they are not familiar with all those tools. So for them, it's difficult to understand also, or even like, it's difficult to try to seduce them to come to you to use all those platforms. So this is why we need to think about how human mediation, can be in between, trying to bridge it so people can understand more and at least feel more friendly about it. And also this the goal is trying to turning a lonely screen into a social event. So try to connect people. So we try something very different, which is we invite a streamer, a live streamer, to help our audience to understand the digital platform that we prepare. And he is going to talk in Chinese, so I'm not going to play the sound for you, but you can still have a sense of how we are doing this. I will explain a little bit. So as you can see, he's like a streamer and trying to explain to our audience that how you can experience this Net.Open. So he's like browsing through some of the pages and then explain what's inside, and then even trying to talk to the robot, the chatbot, and then telling people that this is what you can see, and then what does blockchain means, and how are you going to use a wallet to come into this platform. So that is a very successful experience for us because in this the program, in this event, we sort of realized that to prepare our audience, not only that you just put everything online or because a lot of time even the instruction for audience can be very difficult, and so we work with Lucky to sort of guide through the audience on the internet, and then also tell them why this is important or why that is new, because he is also someone who are very familiar with new technology. And this for us is a very successful experience. So that's something that I've been trying for the past few years, and still a lot coming up. Like in this new museum that I'm working for, I'm trying to I'm actually trying to build a new platform where we can engage all our members and all our VIPs and all our event organizer, put everybody together in the same platform, and then using digital tools to engage them more with the museum, and then also to prepare a more friendly environment for them. So, for example, if there are audience who with special needs, we also try to prepare this digital platform to help them, to assist them of any special needs. So I want to share with you that I've been thinking about these new roles for curators. And because before, maybe a lot of time you were thinking, apart from the content, of course, but then, in terms of experience, we are thinking more about designing space and creating an environment for our audience. But then here it comes to the virtual world that actually is more of, in terms of, making this platform, you're actually thinking about more designing the system, designing the software, and then also thinking about what's the user's interaction. So for me, it's very much from curator lead to a community-driven sort of change that with the new platform, a new digital space, that's put in this way, a virtual space, it can actually connect the community very well. I guess that's it. And my time is just about it.
That's perfect timing.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. So there are a few questions to begin, and I'll just read those to you, Frankie. So
Yes.
the first one, in the 2021 Taiwan International Video Art Exhibition entitled Anima, in terms of engagement, do you have data about the duration of time that audiences spent with each video art piece displayed as an installation and the accompanying screening program? Was this ticketed in a cinema setting with a linear screening?
You mean, so how much time do I have data about how much time the audience spent in the room?
Yeah, in front of each piece.
In front of each piece? Okay. I don't think I have very detailed data of that, but I do have a very general sort of an estimate, because of course then because in that exhibition some of the videos are very long, some of them are very short. So for the long one, yes, I do have this impression that it's difficult for anyone to be engaged in an art video, more than 10 minutes. So we do also have this kind of challenge. But for the short videos, yes, it's easier.
Okay. And the second part of Portland's question um, was the screening program done, as a ticketed cinema-like experience? How did the audience get to see it? Was it just first come, first serve? How many people can fit in the room, or was it a kind of standard ticketing process?
Mm. Okay. There are two ways, and we've done them both, and both work quite well. One of the way is you just repeat, you're looping the video, and so it's literally like a cinema room, but of maybe not so many chairs. So it's more or less like a room of say 10 people, like 10 seats, or sometimes people just sit on floors. And so that's one of the way that we are doing it. And normally for that, we will do video works that is less than, say, 30 minutes. So that's about maybe the maximum like amount of time that people can stay. And but for a longer video artworks, which sometimes some of them can be 2 hours, and even in one of the video art edition that we've even done, we've shown an artwork by a Chinese director, which is 12 hours long video. And for that, we will mark the time. We will schedule it. So, for example, every 2 hours there will be a new start. So people, when they just walked in, they know they are in the middle of this video. So if they want to see, they see. If they want to watch it from the beginning, they left and then come back. They know exactly what time to start for the next session. So we've worked for both of the models, and they are all okay.
And actually, the last person is asking something as you're speaking. Do you think seating for elder people would welcome them more?
And especially for like more like digital content and things.
Well, I'm assuming speaking about, black box screening, was there seating so that it would be easier for elder people?
Very good questions. Um, and to be honest, that while I was working for the International Video Art exhibition, because it's a private museum, so I guess because the mission of serving the public is not that big, so at that time we didn't really think too much. I mean, we prepare seats for people, but I didn't really design something special for the elderly. But now with the new museum in the new Taipei City Art Museum, that because we do like a lot of our visitors are like more than 60s, or they have special needs, or even for kids, for their parents and kids, we have a lot of that. And we do realize that for them a black box is very unfriendly, not only for that they walk in, they cannot see anything, but then also and we have a lot of comments from the elderly that, because some of the videos can be like really loud, or inside the contents, some loud and then some all of a sudden very, very quiet. So they couldn't get used to this very sensational sort of experience. So we do have a lot of comments from them. And then now it's a very big mission of when we're thinking about the content that we want to prepare in this museum. That's also something that we will definitely evaluate. And then in terms of seats, yes, we are we are working with space, especially exhibition space designer, that every one of our exhibition has to consider of for the elderly or for the people who in needs, that if they need to sit down, or if they need to take their time slowly, we want to make sure they have seats or space to rest. So that's one of the main mission of the new Taipei City Art Museum.
Okay, something related. A question is being asked, can these exhibitions be experienced on mobile phones as well?
Yes. Yes, it is. There is also like a version for mobile phone. So if you try to see Net.Open through mobile, it's also possible.
Okay. Rashmi asks, could you please talk about the future maintenance of digital art for glitches in the hardware or software?
Wow, that's a big question. Well, I don't know. Well, I mean, I cannot say I'm like, one of the expert, because I'm not a very, like I'm not a tech person. But through my experience, I will say, if there is a future of this, sort of hoping that, with all those digital tools that we've been using in our daily life, not only in art, in our daily life, I was speaking from a perspective of a museum deputy director, I was hoping that all those tools, one, it can assist us to communicate with the audience better and more efficient. And then secondly, I hope I think the future is more that, if the artists or the curators can think out of the box, that, there's no limitation of a space. I mean, it can, for example, maybe in the future for an artist or for a curator, you don't the first thing or your challenge is not is never how big is the space, or how bright the environment can be, or anything physical, but it's more like in the virtual space, in the virtual world, how do you engage your audience, and then how do you show the ideas of the concept in this virtual world, and then more like trying to break the barriers. And then even like with the language, like what we are using now a lot, I think before we will probably like worry about that. If you prepare an artwork, you have to think about how many there's translation, there's different language adapted for local people. But in the future, with the appropriate tools, maybe this will all be very, very easy. Like when you go on an internet, if you are trying to search for some materials that is not the language that you can directly just click translate. And then even if it's not the best translation, but still you get a sense of what it was saying. So that is a very, very, very sort of useful tools for the audience. So it's also, I mean that all those tools should be a good in mediator for us to get to know each other more.
Mm.
Mm,
Isabella's asking something related, which is cost. How much would you
mm,
estimate these digital methods cost? So, in other words, I mean, I suppose the thing to ask is relating to cost. If you compared making physical shows versus, an emphasis on the digital,
mm,
when you're thinking about budgets, can you
mm,
talk about that a little bit?
mm. I will say if it was like 10 years ago, making making a digital art or a virtual like platform or project can be more expensive than like a physical like exhibitions, because because at that time maybe the technology is not so advanced, and then also there are less software for us to choose. But now I will say a lot of time it can be equal, or sometimes can even be less, because you cannot imagine how fast the technology can evolve. Now before, if we try to making one of these artwork, for example, for like the chatbot, the robot. Before, if I in a museum, I want to have a robot in my website, it will cost you a lot of money. But now it's very easy. There are a lot of models, there are a lot of tools that you can use. You just need to know how to use it smartly. So that can save you a lot of money. So I would say now maybe equal.
Hmm,
Mm,
interesting. So Nicholas is asking, since curation is in some way education, and with young Chinese people only familiar with Da Vinci or Van Gogh, or the masterpieces of the Palace Museum in Taipei, and
mm.
also the explosion of technological possibilities in art being so young, how would you suggest grounding general audiences and youths in some definition of a local definition or criteria for being art?
Sorry, can you sort
That's
of explain
that's
that?
a little complex of a question. I
Yeah.
mean, essentially, I think what Nicholas is asking is, if audiences, certainly local audiences, because you said, well, maybe they're only familiar with, very
Mm,
famous works of art.
yeah.
How do you prepare your contemporary audience for definitions of, well, what is art? What is,
Mm,
as saying, semblance of a local definition or
mm,
criteria for being art?
mm. Well, that, in the museum, you do that through education programs, through public programs. And um, it can be difficult, I have to say, because it's a very long-term sort of work to do, and you won't see the result very fast. So very easily you can be very frustration. And but it's necessary. I mean, you just have to do it. You have to prepare the audience from a very basic sort of knowledge, but not in a way of giving a talk or giving in a lecture of what art is, but prepare instead of that you have to prepare an interesting, I would say maybe interesting program for them to at least they are willing to reach you, and then they are willing to know what you are trying to say, of all those art sort of knowledge, or what is art, and all those debates. I think one of the important thing is also try to make them think what is art instead of telling them what is art, which in education this is one of very important thing to do.
Mhm. A different aspect of the same question, Isabella is saying that she just worked at the National Gallery Citizens Assembly in the UK. And she says, do you have any advice for a relatively older, more traditional and historical art institution to adopt the same methods of exhibition and access as you've presented? Online streaming,
Mm,
Decentraland, etc. So, in other words, rather than talking about educating an audience, it's
mm.
educating an older
The
kind of
artist.
institution.
Yeah. Yes, I have a lot of experience in that, really, because after people knowing that I've been doing this, research on digital art, and also have this experience, I have a lot of like rather senior artist friends come to me and asking me that how can they start, or how can they be involved in this, because they are also worried about it's coming so fast, the future is coming so fast. How are they going to face it? And um, it can be difficult, I really have to say, because even me, I mean, I'm not young anymore, and when I was doing this, I have to spend a lot of time trying to keep up with the new technology, the new knowledge, and then trying to understand what this term means, or understand what that terms mean. And so not even not that I if for me it's like really you have to not only spending time, you have to really put yourself together and then force yourself to try to reach them. And I always joke about that. You know what, for the generation of the internet, they don't have that problem. Because they were born to know, to to feel that the internet exists, and then they are in between all those new technology without any doubt. So there is already like it's not fair from the beginning, but I still see a lot of senior artists who are trying to do that, or even even on even on the other side, they try to look back from what they understand about art, and then but how does that apply in the new digital world of art? So it's very interesting, but yeah, it happens. Yeah.
Hmm. Okay, there are a few more questions.
Wow, we have so
So,
many questions
yes,
tonight.
well, that's a good thing. People are interested. So, an anonymous attendee asks, what do you think is lacking in Taiwan's arts ecology? How do you think people could improve that?
Improve what?
The art ecology of Taiwan.
The art college in Taiwan.
No, art ecology.
Oh, art ecology in Taiwan. Oh,
Yeah,
this must coming from a Taiwanese, I guess.
yeah.
Um, um, it's also a very big question, and I can only speak for myself. After so many years working in arts, of course, like in Taiwan, we are struggling from from being recognized in the international art world. And then I know a lot of artists or curators who have this anxiety of not being seen. And but from my perspective, to improve the ecology, the art ecology, it's not only like one person's job. I mean, I'm in my position, you are in your position. We are all in different position, but you just have to do what you got to do. And then all putting together that we can sort of move forward a little bit. And because I'm working for an art museum, especially a public art museum, and I think I will say that uh, even if one of the main mission is to present good artwork or present high quality art exhibition, but let's not forget that art is not only for artists, for art professions, it's also for everybody. So I will say that to improve the art ecology, artists has to just try to do the best artists can do, and the museum will do what the best museum can do. And then you also have to think about that audience or who you are talking to. It's part of the ecology. You just have to include them in so you can have a better communication. So what you've done, you have someone that you can talk to. So you have the communication, and that's the beautiful part of art. You have the communication.
Hmm. Something related in a way. A question, are there collectors in Asia, and I suppose especially in Taiwan, of net art, video art,
Mm.
like the Kramliks or Julia Stoschek in Berlin?
Mm. Yeah, there are actually there are a lot of traditional collectors, but more and more there are also collectors who are interested in digital arts. Starting from maybe video arts, there are a lot of collectors for video arts, and then also I've seen quite a few young collectors who sort of started to accept the ideas of collecting a net art or an art piece with just an app or something. That's also we also have that. I won't say they have a lot, but yeah, there are a few of them, and hopefully in the future there will be more.
All right, two more questions, if you can bear with us. So let's see, this question is a little complicated. So the person is essentially asking, considering AI and fake content, what what protections do you have in place in terms of firewalls, et cetera, for open access spaces online?
Um, with that question, because yeah, because we are a public run museum, and also for Net.Open, the Taipei Fine Arts Museum, also a public run museum. So it's very strictly regulated that we need to have a very strong firewall for all the contents that we have. And but that in also like, some small interesting thing that, because one of the work of Zheng Xianyu is talking about fake news and generating the fake news, right? And even if we have like, try to prepare the best we can for the contents, for the protection of the contents, but still our official connection, like the web, the how do you say that the Wi-Fi signals still recognize this piece as fake news because there's some keywords and it's fake news because it's generating fake news. So this particular work, I cannot access to it through the computer in my office. So
Okay.
that's how strong the firewall is. I can't even see this project
Nice.
that we create from
Okay.
the office. But you can see from outside.
Mhm.
Mm.
Then Teresa Long asks, have you worked with artwork that combined embroidery or Chinese knotting and digital forms? If so, do you have some learning about optimizing that type of experience?
um, of Chinese embroidery not related to digital work? Is that the question?
No, combined embroidery or Chinese knotting and digital forms.
Okay. Mm. Interesting that you asked these questions. Yes, actually we did because we have a lot of in Hong-gah because we have a lot of Chinese embroidery collection. So one of the project that we've done is we invite video artists recreate the image of the one of the significant piece of the Chinese embroidery artwork. So literally, she hired somebody to remade like a copy of this Chinese embroidery, and then she made a video of people destroying this embroidery and then putting it back together. So it's a video artwork, sort of like a tribute to this significant Chinese embroidery work. And then she donated this work to the museum. So it's one of our collection now.
Okay, and the last question is from Mike asking, do you think there is an international style of digital art or one
What
that's
does that mean,
forming?
international style?
Well, for example, in architecture, there's the international style, which was Mies van der Rohe, et cetera. So, in other words, is there a generalized contemporary style that's forming that you could say covers a lot of digital work, or is it also still so unique and differentiated that it's hard to say that there is one sort of work?
Mm. Yeah, I would say, yeah, it's hard to say, but mostly because it's evolving too fast. It's like, every 2 minutes you have a very different way of making those arts because every 2 minutes you have a new tools of making it. So I would say, yeah, at least I can't see so far a very like, specific sort of style.
Okay.
Mm,
Great. So with that, thank you so much, Frankie. Thanks to the
thank you.
audience. And Frankie, we'll see you on the link with the students.
Yes, thank you so
Thanks.
much.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.